Hi everyone. So today we have Harshada with us. She is a professional tarot card reader, a counselor, and a lifetime seeker. She is one of the most beautiful souls that I have come across in my lifetime. And her tarot journey started when she was as young as 15, 16-year-old. She learned it from her aunt, and it came like a very natural gift to her. So, welcome,
Thank you
Harshada.
so
Thank you
much.
so much for joining me today.
It's a
Thank you.
privilege for me to talk with you. And on a topic I don't think we have spoken about personally, also,
Yes,
but we have such private views about, and then to talk about this, I'm looking forward to
amazing,
it.
amazing. So, because Navratri is round the
Yeah.
corner, and there is so much that changes on the energy level
Mm,
when
mm.
this kind of any time of the year approaches.
Yeah.
There's so much change that happens. So, that was the whole thought before curating this
Yeah.
candid conversations. And let us just start with the first thing that comes to my mind. What do you understand by divine feminine energy?
Yeah, it's like there's so much that could be said because this topic is really so vast and deep, and each one has their own interpretation and understanding of it. Divine feminine, although, like, my spiritual journey started when I was very young, and it started with self study. The divine feminine energy is not something that was part of the culture that I was brought up in, and definitely was not part of my own journey as such.
Correct.
It was only when I moved to Gujarat, and then the whole Navratri and
Yes.
Garba festival that started,
Hmm.
that even got me thinking about what does it mean, what is the whole idea of goddess. And there are so many
Correct.
matas here that I worship, like there's Ma Ambe, there is, all of
Different
these
forms.
different
Yes.
forms.
Yes.
um, so that's when I really kind of, I think, started to not question, I would say, but I think to think about what does this whole idea of goddess and devi really mean,
Right.
and I don't think I have a complete understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like within our culture, particularly the Hindu culture, it's a subject on its own,
Totally.
completely.
Totally.
So yeah, but uh, I think coming to the practice that I do know very much about, which is tarot, and I have two cards here, which I think demonstrate to me at this very point in life
Mm-hmm.
what it means to be a divine feminine.
Yes.
So the first I have is the Three of Cups,
Okay.
which is three women celebrating life, nurturing creativity, support system, enjoying and having a good time together.
Right.
That definitely is the divine feminine to me in a lot of
Wow.
ways. And it definitely comes from the great female friendships that I have,
Amazing.
because when I
Yes.
am with my group of girlfriends,
Hmm.
there is no particular agenda as such,
Hmm.
but what we are really doing is nurturing each other with love. We are
Right.
pouring our hearts out, we are celebrating each other. It doesn't mean like we're celebrating goals or
Yes. Just
personal
the being.
successes.
Just
Just,
being.
yes,
Yes.
exactly, like celebrating you for who you
You are
are.
correct.
And I come away from each of my gatherings with my female friends
Hmm.
with so much more joy, energy, and really feeling divine, you know.
Wow. So
So,
beautiful. And such a beautiful perspective to divine feminine, because that is what brings out
yeah,
that energy from each one of us. It is the friendship of female friends, one woman cheering the other,
yes,
one woman holding that space for the other, non-judgmental space,
yeah,
that safe space
right,
that is only held by that
yeah,
one friend or two three friends that
yeah,
we have.
yeah.
Beautiful. Amazing.
And then the complete opposite to that is the card of death,
Oh,
which
interesting.
I know it can be very dark and scary, but in tarot, as you know,
Yes.
the
Yes.
death does not mean the death of a thing or a physical death,
Mm-hmm.
but renewal and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And as I kind of inch closer to my mid 30s, I am starting to realize a whole bodily aspect of being a female, and therefore something that is in a way beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
Whether because even though I am not a mother and not at the stage of motherhood, I've realized how my body has changed from when I was a kid
Younger.
to where I am now, and the
Yes.
power of the own body. So there's physical transformation that I have seen within myself.
Correct.
Although sometimes it's very difficult to accept that physical transformation, and some people may not even call it transformation, they would just call it fat or whatever it is. But I think that is
Yes.
that part of transformation is something that I also associated with the feminine energy. And it's a divine thing that our body does. It's a divine thing that our body does every month, which has its own cycle, its own understanding, and its
Correct.
own kind of process in a
Right.
way. And I think the transformation of a role and different roles that happen. So I think when I was younger, I was just a student, I was just a daughter. And as I come into my mid 30s, I'm realizing there are so many aspects to my own identity, and they have transformed over a period of time. Where I think, like, if I talk about transformation of my relationship with, let's say, my parents, it's no longer that of like to become the caregiver as the daughter instead of the caretaker in a way.
Right.
So there is that transformation.
Yes.
Then there is the transformation of getting married and what it means to be a wife, and that understanding of mine also keeps changing
Yes,
as
yes,
I get
absolutely.
older.
Correct.
So that is there. But also, like, what it means to be a sister. Like, I have a sister, and what it means to be a sister to her. So
When you were younger, it was different,
yeah.
and now, as
Yes,
you said, mid 30s, it would mean a whole new
different thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think so death, in a way, I think it's a part of, and when I observe a lot of women around me, I think transformation is definitely something that women go through more rapidly and in shorter periods of circle, as I see some of my male counterparts or people that I know.
And
I
there
mean,
is a lot of resistance around change, any kind of change and transformation also.
yeah,
The physical change that you talked about, or even the role changes.
yeah,
Some of the people that I know, many of the people that I know are still stuck in what roles they played or what
yeah,
body they had,
yeah,
and they want to be there in
right,
time, not realizing that change is only
yeah,
constant.
right, yeah.
But then how do you bring balance to that anger? Because anger, again, if it goes beyond, it
Yeah,
can cause destruction.
right.
And with great power of Kali comes great responsibility as well.
Yeah.
How do you maneuver that emotion then?
I think it's without guilt. Like, if something needs to be taken away and something needs to be cut off, these could be relationships, this could be an actual thing that needs to be thrown away.
Correct.
Whatever kind of, I think, whatever
The letting go.
intensity of destruction or taking away needs to happen, do it, I think, without guilt. Just to say that
Interesting.
if it has to come back, it comes back. If it doesn't have to come back, it doesn't come back. And making room for new.
So being in complete allowance of what you are feeling.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So coming to the 9 forms of Maa Durga, the first one, and you are our first guest, the first one being Shailputri, who
Yeah.
represents strength, she represents stability.
Yeah.
Where in your life you have really tapped into that inner strength, and how do you ground yourself?
Yeah.
Is there a story where you had truly tapped into these divine energies?
You know, it's funny that you say this because there is a story to it.
Yes.
So she's also the daughter of the mountains.
Yes.
Right. My discovery to spirituality started in the mountains. This is when I was in boarding school in Ooty. And funnily, I went to a Christian boarding school, right? So it was very Christian oriented, like religion, spirituality, what you would want to call it. And I didn't really agree with it. Like, it didn't, somewhere it didn't fit right.
It didn't resonate.
Yeah. And one of my favorite places in school was always a library. And one day when I was little cranky and irritated with this with this preaching that was happening every day.
Hmm.
And I had strict instructions from home. You're there for education, you focus on that, you know. So that is what the instruction from home was about. And but I was frustrated kind of being in that environment, and I have nothing against Christianity or anyone like that. But my own belief system was not aligning.
Correct. Yes.
And I was really struggling. But I come from an atheist family. So it was even more confusing for me, and I felt like I agreed with the theological perspective that all religions have, including Christianity. There's someone bigger and higher than you. So that bit I resonated with, but I didn't resonate with their idea of what the higher being is. And one random day when I was in the school library, and I used to visit all sections of the library. And somewhere randomly in between lots of these fat encyclopedias was this tiny skinny book called The Energy of Prayer by Thich Nhat Hanh, who then became my remote guru for so long. I've never met him, but there's an instant connection. And that was my introduction to Buddhism, who doesn't really have they have a god figure, but it's not the ideal worship in the way that we have, and is not there. And so my spiritual journey starts in the mountains in this way. And so whenever we think about the first form of Shailputri, she's a daughter of the mountains. I really feel like I am a daughter of the mountains in that way, because
spirituality
started from there, and that opened up so many avenues. I made peace with so many things. As a teenager, you're struggling with so many things, especially, and then when you're away from home and in a boarding school, it's even more difficult to ground yourself, to know where you come from. You're coming from an atheist background, you're going to a Christian school, you're finding Buddhism. It was all very flux. And there was a lot of anger, because apparently I'm an angry person, or
so it's maybe it's tagged that way or projected that way. But
so then it's I feel like I was born at that very moment. I came to an understanding of who I am and what I am, and therefore became a person at that very moment and in that instance on the mountains. And I remember that visual so clearly of reading the first chapter of the prayer of energy. My school was right at the top of the mountain. I was sitting in the garden, and it overlooks the valley, and I'm overlooking the valley. The clouds are there. I'm literally on top of the mountain, and so whenever I think of the first of Shailputri, that's what I think of. My mind immediately goes back to that moment in boarding school on the mountains.
So this was your moment of finding inner strength and grounding stability. Because obviously being in a boarding school and having your own shares of struggles, plus growing there, your teenage years. Was it your teenage years when you found this? It was so much more important to find that right guidance, that stability and inner strength at that time.
Right. Absolutely. Until this day, that was my introduction to prayer and meditation. Until this day, for me, the grounding energy is meditation. And whenever I do sit in meditation, the first image that always comes to me is that mountaintop view, because that is kind of stamped in my brain and in my image.
Excellent. So how has that, in now coming back to today, from that Harshada to today, how has that really helped you grow in your professional life and your personal life, finding that inner strength and stability? When you mentioned that you practice meditation and that is your go-to for tapping into that inner strength or tapping into that grounding energy, how has it helped you grow?
I think it has helped me grow with steadfastness. And I think what keeps me, although I might, I'm never impulsive. I'm not someone who's impulsive. You could hurry me as much as you want, and I cannot be hurried into any place. It's almost like an inability of mine. And I think that comes from that practice of sitting still.
Beautiful.
Because when you're sitting still, you're not going anywhere, and the only place you're going is in your mind, which is also nowhere.
Correct. Yes.
So I think the practice of just sitting still every day is, I think, steadfastness. That is what it has helped me with. To have one thing and to go at it with a lot of faith and patience, but sitting where you are right now. People say like my heart skipped a beat. My heart never skips a beat because it is very much right here in this moment. This moment. That doesn't go to say that I don't feel anxious or I don't feel fear or I don't overthink. Yes, there are moments of that, but I'm able to gather myself,
you come back to the center
and come back.
Wow.
Yeah. I could have a full crying fit for 15 minutes, but I'm very quickly able to gather myself.
The resilience has increased because of that.
Yeah,
okay.
Certainly. And prayer, I think prayer, I combine prayer and meditation together because I think each and both of them are the same thing.
So what does intuition mean to you? And so in all of this, being true to who you are and not really even bothering about the societal norms, there has to be a very strong conviction in knowing your inner voice, which you mentioned. You know yourself better. So when we are in tune with our inner voice, that is the moment when we understand that yes, I know myself. And in my understanding, it comes a lot from tapping into the intuition, or that inner voice is the intuition, always guiding us, always telling us this way or that way. So what is your experience of tapping into your intuition, and how has it worked, or has it worked, not worked? How do you tap into your intuition?
Intuition always works.
Intuition
I take all my decisions in life based on that gut feeling, that inner feeling. If it feels right to me, I'm not afraid. If I'm afraid, then it's not right. That's I think my thumb rule on gauging whether it's in intuition or not.
So this will tell you clearly that it is
right. And actually, I have a very sensitive stomach, and I know for a fact that if my stomach's upset, it's because there's something that is not right, or I have done something that was not right. It's always been like that. Intuition, again, going back to that little girl in Ooty in this boarding school, it comes from there, because I had a teacher, art teacher, and in art we always talk about inspiration and what is inspiration, and we used to have these great dialogues with my teachers. Because I went to a religious school, the teachers had a very different conviction of what they were doing. The conversations were in classrooms were very different to what would have been in another school,
which was not so conventionally religious.
So the discussions were always very spiritual, they were always very theological. The discussions were always more than what you are just seeing in around you. And so we used to have these conversations a lot, like what is inspiration, where does it come from? And all the art students who used to take art, they used to have this like exhibition, and it was quite a great fair, because the parents came to see and appreciated what the artwork it produced and all of that. And just before, I think when I was in standard 9 or something, and we were going for summer holidays, just as the exhibition finished, my teacher came up to me and she gave me at that time what would have been a very expensive gift. It was a set of Stedler drawing pencils with a card on it. And the card said that your inner voice can only be found when you drown out the noise around you. And I held on to that, and I think that is what intuition is to me.
That so beautifully justifies. That's the noise.
Right.
That's the noise that needed to drown to truly tap into your inner voice.
And what are we doing when we do meditation? I think that is what we are doing. The universe is you and you are the universe. So when you are drowning out the noise around you, you are so much in touch with your own self,
And
intuition, and all
yes,
of these
and
things.
literally it does make so much sense, because all these practices that we are doing, any of the spiritual practices, and that is something that I wanted to ask you also, it is ultimately helping us getting in tune to our that inner voice, and just
Yeah.
shadowing, or not just shadowing, it is completely drowning. That's the word, drowning all the noise around, and making that inner voice
Yeah.
stronger,
Right.
in turn making the inner strength
Yeah.
more and more stronger,
Yeah.
and giving us that ground,
Yeah. Absolutely.
because that conviction comes from within. I know who I am, I know what I do, why I do it.
Right.
Everything comes from that
Yeah.
inner voice turning into conviction, turning
Right.
into strength,
Yeah.
and being fearless,
Right.
like Kali.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, what are your spiritual practices, rituals that you do on a everyday basis, other than meditation and Reiki?
Yeah.
What is it that you associate with? You have already mentioned Reiki, and I assume tarot is also something that
Yeah.
you practice on everyday basis. So, what are those everyday practices that keep you in tune with
Yeah.
your divine feminine, or just your strength?
Yeah, I think this is it really. I don't do very much. I don't have a very complex ritual of things.
Hmm.
There is, I mean, I have a basic timetable.
Hmm.
Like I would do my prayers in the
Hmm.
morning before I start my day. And then I'll do Reiki before
Hmm.
I start,
Hmm.
taking appointments. Sometimes I don't even do it in the morning. I do it in the afternoon, as long as I've done it in the
Hmm.
day. And that's about it. I think the only other thing that I would add to it is reading. I read a lot, and you in the introduction you mentioned, you said I'm a seeker, and very
Yes.
much I seek in knowledge,
Yes.
which is also again a very goddess thing to do. Like
Correct.
we have Saraswati, and we have, so that is kind of the only other thing I would add to that.
Beautiful. So,
Yeah.
just to sum it up, I feel this was such a enlightening conversation, and so much that we touched upon, from finding inner strength to how can we find that grounding, how can we apply that in our everyday life, and how can we leave this world uh, with this power of compassion and empathy that can really make this world a better place, and truly imbibing that divine feminine energy in each and every heart uh, can make a huge difference. But it all starts with your heart. How can I, as an individual, imbibe and embody that compassion and empathy? Uh, ignoring Ignorance is not always bliss. Uh, Fighting that ignorance and standing up for who you are, standing up for your inner voice, being in tune with your inner voice. So much that we had today, and I'm really, really thankful from all my heart, Harshada, that you chose to come here, have this conversation, and it was not just because we had to do this podcast. It is genuinely so uh, lightening to know that there is so much more to learn. There are so many new books that you learn when you have these conversations. There is so much uh, more understanding, the deeper understanding that you learn from the other person.
Yeah.
So thank you for
No,
sharing all
thank
of that.
you, and
Thank you
thanks
so much.
for having me, for being a great listener. Like, I think I talk too much.
No, I think that's important, but thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.